Okay. So, Hare Krishna, dearest devotees, I wish to welcome all of you for tonight's very special Srila Prabhupada Lila Katha. And tonight, we are really happy and blessed to have a very special guest from a nearby place, South Africa. And I would let me call upon His Grace Hari Mohan Prabhu, who is our Vice President of Shri Radha Golokananda Mandir, to introduce and welcome our tonight's guest. Hari Mohan Prabhu, you can please.
Hare Krishna. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Govardhan Das Prabhu, such a great personality. Govardhan Das was born in Durban, South Africa, and first met the devotees in 1982. Although attracted by their Harinam, he was elected to take a copy of the Science of Self-Realization. From then, but after reading the first 60 pages, he instantly became a vegetarian and he started chanting Hare Krishna. Saved by Srila Prabhupada's book, Govardhan Das remains connected to them since that day. He began by distributing books and now serves as a trustee of BBT Africa and as a global BBT trustee. Serving as the chairman of the BBT board, he is also responsible for Back to Godhead magazine. And as an active ISKCON member, he has served as co-temple president, regional secretary, and national secretary. He also served as global duty officer with a focus on ISKCON economy. He was initiated in 1994 by His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. In his youth, Govardhan Das was not allowed to join the temple. So he practiced Krishna consciousness at home while pursuing his university studies. He obtained a bachelor's degree in commerce, a master's and a doctoral degree in business administration, and has subsequently held positions ranging from business manager to director of several South African government and private companies. Keenly interested in ISKCON governance and financial sustainability, Govardhan Das makes good use of his secular expertise in finance and economy by strengthening and enhancing the operation efficiency of the Global Property Office, to which he was recently appointed. Furthermore, as an academic teacher, he is affiliated with the Alfred Ford School of Management MBA program in Radadej, Belgium. During the 2020 annual general meeting of the GBC body in Sridham, Mayapur, Govardhan Das was unanimously appointed as governing body commissioner. He is presently co-GBC for Mauritius. In an interview with Gopal Bhatt Das on the topic of exploring the people behind the policies, Govardhan Das Prabhu shared thoughts on the economic risk and mitigation of ISKCON arising from the COVID-19. Prabhuji spoke about the necessity to get a good quality database initiated devotees worldwide. I take this opportunity to suggest that Prabhuji liaise with ISKCON leaders in Mauritius at the earliest to help us on how to get fund for our temple construction, which is in progress, and is the management of our Govinda restaurants. In your interview, Prabhuji, you made reference to ISKCON as part of the global economy. You spoke on many issues, such as mechanism to get fund, collective responsibility, and state of readiness to save ISKCON economy, your duty to serve ISKCON for next 10,000 years, you said, innovation to survive the next 18 months, inefficiency has no place in ISKCON, final advice of Srila Prabhupada for preaching and book distribution, and see to it that not one penny is unnecessarily spent. So we will now share with us, discuss this chapter in every town and village, and especially in this chapter, Srila Prabhupada made reference to book distribution, and as trustee of BBT, you will get the opportunity to elaborate more on the importance of book distribution. I invite you, Prabhuji, to start your presentation. The screen is yours, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjanan Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Padantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ajanalambita Bhujo Kanakavadato Shankirtanika Pitaro Kamalayataksho Vishwambaro Dijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunaravataro. Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
I'm audible. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So I offer my obeisances and respectful pranams to all the wonderful devotees there in Mauritius. This evening we have an hour's reading and discussion of chapter 8 of Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrta. The chapter is entitled Every Town and Village. Let me take the opportunity to commend the management and the devotees of Mauritius for this very innovative initiative in celebration of Srila Prabhupada's 125th anniversary. As far as I know, there is no other program like this anywhere in the world. So you're the only country that has a regular program to observe Srila Prabhupada's 125th in the way you have. So congratulations on that. And thank you for the wonderful opportunity to associate with you this evening, inviting me to come and read and remember Srila Prabhupada in your association. The idea is that I'll read a few extracts. It's quite a long chapter. We'll not be able to do it in an hour. Read a few extracts and say a few things, and hopefully we can have a few minutes at the end for some exchange. I hope that that's okay. So I'm going to read now chapter 8, Every Town and Village, London, August 1971. From Florida, this remote corner of the world, Prabhupada returned to New York, and after 3 days flew to London. There he became ill. On August 14th, he wrote to Tamal Krishna, I am sick here since the last 4 days. There is no sunshine. Almost always there is darkness and rain. So it has affected my health because I am already rheumatic. Prabhupada said he wanted to retire from traveling and management. This body is old, it's giving warning, but he didn't have sufficient confidence that his leading managers could push on without his pushing them. Prabhupada complained to his secretary, Shyama-Sundar, criticizing him and the other zonal secretaries for not producing and distributing his books on a large scale. Why are there no books? Prabhupada demanded, and Shyama-Sundar cringed, unable to give a satisfactory answer. Shyama-Sundar said he would immediately write to his godbrothers on the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. Why have a book trust? Prabhupada argued. What have they done? Where there is no stock of big books, There is no literatures in foreign languages after years of promises and plans. Why hasn't the unabridged Bhagavad Gita as it is been printed as yet? Well, Shamasundar replied, because they know it's your responsibility, Prabhupada yelled. Why haven't you done it? Prabhupada chastised his GBC secretaries around the world through one secretary before him. The GBC's duty were to see that Prabhupada's books were always in stock, that Back to Godhead magazine was being published regularly, that accounts were being paid regularly, and that devotional life in the temples was healthy. Our business is how to expand, said Prabhupada, how to introduce Krishna consciousness into educational circles. Let any philosopher, scientist, or educationist come. We've got enough stock. But this sleeping, this leisurely work will not do. They can learn actively from an old man like me, because my determination is like this. If I die working, it is a great credit, just like a marshal. If he dies on the battlefield, it is his credit. Arjuna was told, even if you die, you are still the gainer. This is a slow process of printing, is the most condemned position. Why should I go on translating when you cannot print? You say, retire and translate. But why should I translate? No one will ever see it. I can give volumes. There's Dai Nopon who will print in Japan on credit. So why don't you print? Always it is to be done. It is to be done. That's all. And big men complaining, either he goes or I go. This restlessness, this diversion has to stop. When the Father is providing, it is a duty of the Son to serve. I am the Father, I'm giving you everything. Why don't you serve me by printing these books? If one book only is read and understood, that is sufficient to make him Krishna conscious. Don't you see how important it is? They're always asking me, in such and such a bona fide book, they can't even take the time to read one of my books, and still they ask for one of my god brother's books. How will things go on? First canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is not even edited or corrected. What to speak of printed? So many books unprinted. So tell them, from the book fund, not a farthing should be for eating. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada, as you can hear, Prabhupada is in quite a spirited way, drawing to the attention of his disciple that, books are fundamentally extremely important. Yes, Srila Prabhupada is saying that the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, now we know that Srila Prabhupada translated this Bhagavatam, the first canto. You notice on all the 12 cantos of the Bhagavatam, the cover of the first canto is very unique because Prabhupada gave instruction, don't change that cover. He designed it personally. So from the whole Bhagavatam set, you'll always see that first canto that Prabhupada's talking about here. And he said, he was so anxious to give the Bhagavatam to the world, actually, that at some point in time, he decided to translate Krishna book, as you remember, right? He wanted to give Krishna book, he wanted to give Krishna's pastimes, because there's a very particular reason for this. Why is Prabhupada so strong about the Bhagavatam? I don't know if any of you have read Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha, where Jiva Goswami, he makes an undefeatable case for the glorious position of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is that one Purana that reconciles all scriptures, and it perfectly represents the philosophy of Vedanta. So in a sense, it's the coherent view of all scriptures. And this Bhagavatam, as is described in the first canto, has now risen like the sun. And for those who have lost their sight in the age of Kali, this sun analogy, he deduces that without the help of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Jiva Goswami is saying, all other scriptures cannot adequately depict reality. So you see, Bhagavatam in our Acharyas, Sridhar Swami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, the Bhagavatam, it held a very central place. It's established as a supreme treasure for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So really, it's the unparalleled highest gift. And because Prabhupada wanted to give the world the best, he took upon the task upon himself to translate this Bhagavatam. You know, he builds here in the Tattva Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami builds a multi-layer argument for the supremacy of the Bhagavatam. Of course, as we all know, the great King Maharaj Parikshit is cursed to die within 7 days. So he chooses to spend those last precious moments to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So the definition of knowledge is that it must be accessible to all, correct, right? So from the Vedas, all the Puranas, mostly they are accessible. But Srimad Bhagavatam is that highest Praman. It's the best evidence, the best authority, and it requires no proof. It requires no proof. Even Sankaracharya, who was the great Mayavad teacher, you know, out of respect for Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll notice he never wrote a translation on it. Although he would quote in his writings 1 or 2 pastimes, which are only there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are no other scriptures. So Jiva Goswami, in the Bhagavatam, he establishes Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead, right? You remember in the very first verse, and I'll just chant that verse because it's such a beautiful verse, where a definition of God is given in such an amazing way. I'm just going to chant it for you. If you have it in front of you, it's the first verse of the Bhagavatam. Janmarya shayato vayadi taratas jate shabijan swarat tene brahmaradaya adikave muyanti yatsuraya tejo vari mrdam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha Dhamma svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. And look at the translation that Prabhupada has given of this verse. That, oh my Lord, Sri Krishna was the son of Vasudeva. He's the all-pervading personality. The universe is manifest from him. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. He imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma. And he goes on to say, I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna. This is the Krishna that Prabhupada wanted to give the world. And that's why he wanted this Bhagavatam to be printed. Of course, Bhagavatam, as we know, it removes all darkness. And in the words of Bhagavatam, there is a perpetual festival of the mind as we read Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, very often, if you read a lot of the Vedic literature, you'll find multiple versions of the same pastime. Like in the Mahabharata, it says that Maharaj Parikshit was still born. Srimad Bhagavatam says that Krishna never allowed Maharaj Parikshit to die. He was protecting his life. So which version do we take? You read that in the Mahabharata again, that Kunti gets, at one point says, get another woman with 5 sons and burn them in our place. But Srimad Bhagavatam says something different. So which version do we believe? Therefore, the Bhagavatam is the supreme Purana. It's Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, that Amala Puran, that emperor of all scriptures. And here Srila Prabhupada is saying that he wants this first canto to be printed. And it's interesting that Srila Prabhupada spends so much of time every day translating the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me read a little bit more, okay? Another extract from page 256. Now Prabhupada is in Nairobi. He came to Nairobi because he was invited by a gentleman there who felt that the weather was warm and Srila Prabhupada would recover and he would feel he would feel much better. So September 9, 1971, as Srila Prabhupada disembarked in Nairobi from the East African Airlines 747 jet, he wore a wool chadar over his shoulders and carried the same white vinyl attaché case he had taken with him all over the world. Flanked by his secretary and servant, he walked with his cane across the airfield towards the terminal building. Inside, he sat on a cloth-covered chair and joined the kirtan, while Indians and Africans gathered around to watch. Kulbhushana, a journalist and friend of Brahmananda Swami, approached Prabhupada with questions. He asked Prabhupada what he had come to teach, and Prabhupada answered, modern civilized man has forgotten his relationship with Krishna, O God. Therefore, he's suffering. Whether you're a Hindu, Muslim, or Buddhist, that doesn't matter. Unless you reestablish your relationship with God, you cannot be happy. Have you come only for the Hindus? Asked Mr. Bhushan. No, Prabhupada replied, for everyone. Mr. Bhushan, East Africa, especially Kenya, is one of those countries which enjoys a great amount of racial harmony in brotherhood of man. What is your special message you can bring to Kenya? Srila Prabhupada answered, that brotherhood of man can be complete when they are in God consciousness. Otherwise, it will again break. The journalist says, so your disciples will be making special efforts to reach the Africans rather than confine themselves to the Hindus? That is very important here in this country. Srila Prabhupada, our method is the same, but the method is so powerful that it appeals to everyone. We do not have to convey a new method for a new place. The method is the same, universal. It will appeal to everyone. So after spending one night in Nairobi, Prabhupada and his party flew the next day in a small propeller aircraft to Mombasa. Mr. Pandya was away, and his family, although not very enthusiastic, opened their home to Srila Prabhupada. The large house was of contemporary design, with round corners and porthole windows, and a spacious living room with veranda facing the ocean. Prabhupada, standing by the window in his room, beheld an aquamarine sea, a cloudless blue sky, and a white sandy beach fringed with palms. Turning back towards Brahmananda Swami and the others, he said, Brahmananda told me that this was one of the most beautiful places in the world. Now I see he is correct. Prabhupada had come with a chronic cough, but walking on the beach and relaxing in the Mombasa sun, he soon recovered his health. Prabhupada maintained his program, begun in London, of daily dialogues with Shyama concerning the Western philosophies. Chronologically, he had proceeded from Socrates to Descartes. Shyama he is saying, I think, therefore I am. First of all, he has discovered that I am. This was the innate basis for truth in his time, and there was no real authority. So Prabhupada goes on to speak about the book they were working on. Then, on September 18th in Nairobi, Srila Prabhupada demonstrated how a sannyasi should preach. For one month, he strictly followed Vedic tradition by staying only 3 days or less in the home of each of his Indian hosts. Then, although his hosts always provided him with good food and comfortable accommodation, he would move on to the next phase. This was the rule for a sannyasi. Prabhupada said it kept them from becoming attached to bodily comforts and from inconveniencing their hosts. For Srila Prabhupada to practice these rudimentary lessons of sannyas was, of course, unnecessary, for he was a Paramahamsa, a sannyasi in the highest order of Krishna consciousness. His body, mind, and words being totally engaged in Krishna's transcendental service, he was automatically detached from material comforts. Nevertheless, he followed the Vedic system just to instruct his disciples by his example. He was following the system of Madhukari, named for the bee, which takes only a little pollen from a flower and then goes to the next. This system of brief visits was enabled Prabhupada to involve more families in Krishna consciousness and to honor the abundance of invitations. Wherever Prabhupada went, he was undisputedly the guru, the venerable sadhu. Yet he would deal intimately with his hosts, developing friendships and behaving practically like an elder member of the family. His hosts would offer him the best room in their home, usually their own bedroom, and the lady of the house, along with her assistants, would cook elaborate meals. Prabhupada's natural Krishna conscious bearing was commanding, and his behavior was always aristocratic. Yet his hosts were charmed by his humility. Quickly, he was becoming the friend and Vaishnav guru of many families in Nairobi. Prabhupada's behavior in Nairobi was instructive for his few Western disciples who accompanied him. On one occasion, Mr. Devji Damji invited Prabhupada to bless the temple room in his house. Prabhupada entered, and Mr. Damji offered him a deer skin to sit on. We do not sit on deer skin, Prabhupada said. It is pure, but our Vaishnavas don't wear them or sit on them. That is for the yogis. Bhavananda, Mr. Jamji entered, invited Prabhupada to sit on his sofa. which had been covered by a clean white cloth. Prabhupada sat down and they bathed his feet. This was the first time I ever saw anyone bathe Prabhupada's feet. They bathed his feet with milk and then with water and rose petals. Then they put chandan on his feet, then red kumkum powder, rice powder, and jasmine flowers. His toes were red from kumkuma, and the grains of rice and little white jasmine flowers just stayed on his feet. And then he gave a talk. I had never noticed the Guru's feet up until that time. That was the first time I realized that the feet of the Guru are special and they are astoundingly beautiful. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Prabhupada wasn't satisfied preaching only to the Indians. He wanted to preach to the Africans. Indians and Africans were completely segregated. But since a Krishna conscious person does not make a distinction based on the body, Prabhupada said the Indians had a duty to share their spiritual culture with the Africans. Prabhupada impressed on Brahmananda Swami that his first duty in Africa was to give Krishna consciousness to the Africans. Because of bad experience in Turkey and Pakistan, Brahmananda Swami had been reluctant to hold public kirtans in Nairobi. Besides, the Africans spoke mostly Swahili. They were culturally different and usually too poor to buy books. Now, devotees, hear what Srila Prabhupada says here. So Brahmananda Swami didn't know how to preach to them effectively. Going to the Indians had been easy and natural. But Prabhupada wanted the Africans. It's an African country, he said simply. They are the proprietors. We should be preaching to them. And with everything else in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada demonstrated how to do this also. He got the use of the Radha Krishna temple, a predominantly African downtown area. The temple had a hall with doors opening onto the busy street. And Prabhupada instructed the devotees to hold kirtan in the hall, keeping the doors open. The devotees did as he asked. And in 5 minutes, the hall began filling up with people. It was a shabby area of town, and the people who entered were illiterate and dirty. But they were curious, and they happily joined in the kirtan, smiling, clapping, and dancing. Brahmananda Swami left the hall and went to the nearby house where Prabhupada was staying. The place is filled with people, Brahmananda Swami said, but it's not necessary for you to come. We can carry on the program ourselves. No, Prabhupada said, I must go. Brahmananda Swami tried to discourage him. No, I must go, Prabhupada repeated. Are you going to take me? When Brahmananda arrived with Srila Prabhupada, the hall was even more crowded than it had been a few minutes before. Prabhupada, in his silk and saffron robes, appeared effulgent as he entered the dingy, poorly lit auditorium. As he walked, the crowd parted, leaving an aisle for him to pass among them, and they watched him curiously. On stage, Prabhupada led a kirtan and lectured. Although the Swahili-speaking audience was unable to understand, unable to understand Prabhupada's lecture, their people were respectful and the kirtan they loved. Members of the Indian community had been apprehensive of Prabhupada opening their hall to the Africans, and some of them had attended to see what would happen. Observing Prabhupada's compassion, this is call coming through here. Observing Prabhupada's compassion program, however, the Indians were impressed. Hare Krishna, this person is trying to call me. Such an apparently simple program had the spiritual potency to erase cultural boundaries. Excuse me for that. There was this call coming through. Prabhuji, I'm still audible, right? Yeah?
Yes, Prabhu.
I'm audible. Okay. Let me just say something at this point in time. And I want you to listen to this last paragraph because it's very intriguing. This should be Brahmananda Swami's mission in Africa. Prabhupada insisted, offering Krishna consciousness to the Africans, and the program should be simple. Distribute prasad, distribute free books, and chanting Hare Krishna with drums and cartels. Krishna consciousness should not be another Nairobi Hindu religious society. The Hindus should take part by donating money. But Brahmananda Swami's preaching and recruiting should be amongst the Africans. This is a very interesting instruction by Srila Prabhupada. Of course, Srila Prabhupada, as you said, had come here to Nairobi because of his health. And like Sukadev Goswami, Srila Prabhupada wouldn't stay, in a house for more than, here it says 3 days. Sukadeva Goswami wouldn't stay for more than the time it took to milk a cow because he was afraid of getting attached. So we see Srila Prabhupada is setting an example here. And it's an important lesson from these Nairobi pastimes because he wanted devotees to preach to the local people. And the preaching was really a very basic formula that Prabhupada gave, whether one is in New York or in Johannesburg, anywhere in the world. Harinam, book distribution. And he wanted books here to be sold at cost. And the African BBT has a policy that they follow this order of Srila Prabhupada very, very strictly. Any African language book is always sold at cost. And it's for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure and his transcendental pleasure, and it's for his glory that we've imbibed that particular order he's given in the lilamrta as our heart and soul. So here in South Africa, there's a language called isiZulu. It's spoken by 10 million Zulu-speaking people. This Bhagavad Gita has just been translated. It's being edited, and this year it will be printed. We also have the Creole Bhagavad Gita, and Mauritian devotee is in a very advanced stage of doing that translation. And soon we'll have that out for distribution. You see, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see in the second canto, Sutta Goswami, from about verses 6 to 26, he explains the science of devotional service. If you read those verses very carefully, you'll see that Srila Prabhupada, he designed the movement along the contour of these verses. He gave the opportunity for every person in every town and village to have having access to Krishna Bhakti. And Jiva Goswami, in his Bhakti Sandarbha, he explains what devotional service is. And there's a whole discussion going on about Dharma and about Vanashram, etc. And Jiva Goswami says the conclusion is just to chant. So if you see Srila Prabhupada, he came wherever he was, he gave the highest gift, although the people are most unqualified, proportionately unqualified to receive it. That is why Srila Prabhupada is the most compassionate, the most merciful personality. Can you imagine giving the most valuable thing to somebody who doesn't even know what the value of it is? I mean, he really extended himself to that. What to speak of every town and village, every devotee in ISKCON who was reading Prabhupada's books or initiated in ISKCON, have the opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead, to Goloka, Vrindavan. Can you imagine? In Goloka, Vrindavan, like in this world, we say gold is very valuable, right? The most valuable thing. People scammer for gold. There in Goloka, Vrindavan, this gold has aroma. It has a special scent. That's how special Vrindavan is. Everything is so sweet and nice there. So let's read a little bit more. Let's read from pages 264. Now, Srila Prabhupada emphasized work. Yet, what was that work? At least for Srila Prabhupada, propagating Krishna consciousness was samadhi itself. Samadhi didn't have to be limited to sitting in a solitary place. The full meaning of samadhi implied complete absorption in the loving service of Krishna with the senses, mind, and intelligence fixed in trance. Thus, in samadhi, one could be active, traveling, preaching, and distributing back to Godhead magazines, chanting in the streets. If a devotee always thought of Krishna and worked on behalf of Krishna, then he was a topmost yogi. This also had been Lord Krishna's advice to Arjuna. Remember me, at the same time fight. Srila Prabhupada was the emblem of active samadhi, always hearing about, glorifying, and remembering Krishna, and always fighting as a soldier on behalf of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada's preaching in Nairobi had been especially active. He had established Krishna consciousness in a new city, setting the example for Brahmananda Swami to emulate, showing the standard for spreading the Krishna conscious movement throughout the continent, and Shyamasundar keeping his GBC godbrothers informed of Prabhupada's amazing activities. The pace had been lightning fast, and his divine grace is opening up yet another vast theater of operations. The people are thronging with curiosity and serious questions. Prabhupada, after finishing one late night preaching marathon, asked for food and remarked, "You see, I am hungry. Keep me talking. That is my life. Don't let me stop talking." But Nairobi was only one city in one country on one continent. And Prabhupada's desire was to see Krishna consciousness in every city, town, and village in the world. How could he do it in one lifetime? Traveling to every city in the world, printing and distributing books in every language, constructing fabulous temples. He couldn't, but he wanted to do as much as possible in whatever time Krishna allotted to him. To ensure that Krishna consciousness movement would survive, he criticized the politicians' typical attitudes that unless they themselves remain active, everything they had to work for would crumble. Such politicians were always reluctant to retire, preferring to remain in office until their last breath. Prabhupada, however, had no personal ambition, and he knew that results were awarded by Krishna. So as a true sannyasi, he had renounced the world and worldly ambition, but he had not become lazy. Now, I just want to pause here for a moment and reflect on Srila Prabhupada's actual achievement. If you look at it very closely, even very objectively, as just a casual reader of the biography of Srila Prabhupada, anybody would be completely mesmerized. Some time ago, I was looking in numbers of what Srila Prabhupada had actually achieved, because sometimes when you speak to somebody, they measure things, not in words, but in numbers. Now, just consider, Srila Prabhupada influenced the world, right? We all agree on that. He not only informed by a prophecy, of course, Prabhupada has prophesied in the ancient scriptures that he will come, and that the holy name will go to every town and village. But yeah, look at this. ISKCON now is about, the institutional age is about 50. Srila Prabhupada was in the 70s. We are reading here, early 70s. He was schooled under the British system, British rule, right? But he chose to go to the USA. He didn't go to Britain. And he went there with a special message. Then he travels on a cargo ship, not on any ship, a cargo ship, where you transport, commodities and industrial stuff. And he took $7 with him, a few books, an umbrella, a suitcase, and he spends 35 days on the ship. Hare Krishna. How determined Srila Prabhupada must have been. I mean, $7 and 35 days on the ship at that age. So almost by divine dispensation, we can say he started this worldwide society. The devotee, Hari Mohan Prabhu, who was introducing me, was saying that we're looking at ISKCON's economy. We considered that in 50 years, that $7 that Srila Prabhupada invested in ISKCON is worth between $2 and $4 billion today. If you compound that, 45% compounded. Today, ISKCON, we have over 1,000 properties all over the world. These property values are north of $6 billion. Srila Prabhupada, ki jai. Just through Srila Prabhupada's pure heart, being a pure devotee of Krishna. I mean, if you had to take a market capitalization of ISKCON, it's bigger than some New York stock exchange company. So his management style was very unique. He was what we call a contrarian leader. He issues an order and then inspires the order to be executed. And you look at the impact that Srila Prabhupada had on the world, is just totally unbelievable. The fact that you and I are here, more particularly myself, an arrogant, completely fallen and useless soul, the fact that I am here in your association is like a miracle to me, to be in the association of what Prabhupada had created. But it's all due to Prabhupada's influence. Just consider, he started this, like it's mentioned, we've just read the Back to Godhead magazine. Prabhupada started the magazine in 1944. We are now almost 75 years plus of the magazine, and it's still in print. We do 1 million copies a year in India, 15,000 copies bi-monthly for the Western version. Then Prabhupada started the BBT in 1972. Books are distributed on the planet. One of Srila Prabhupada's books, somebody on the planet receives it every 3 seconds. The Jameson Bible, which has been distributed for 300 years, somebody receives that every, minute or few minutes. But can you imagine somebody, or every second, but Prabhupada's books, somebody touches or receives Prabhupada's books every 3 seconds. You get the message here? 560 million books distributed. Every 3 seconds, somebody receives it. What do you think will eventually happen? Everyone will get to see or read Prabhupada's books. and initiated 5,000 disciples, Prabhupada, when he was on the planet to help him spread. Today, we have millions of followers. He introduced a Sunday Love Feast program. Guests would come and he would serve them an entire early dinner, chant together. And today we have over 700 ISKCON centers. I'm talking about functional, like big centers, over 1,000 properties. Can you imagine? Even Prabhupada brought the worship of Jagannath against the tradition. He brought it out to the West. He started the first chain of pure vegetarian restaurants. He delivered 2,200 lectures. Should memorize these numbers. These are like purifying statistics. He delivered 2,200 lectures. He gave 1,300 recorded conversations. He wrote 6,000 letters, wrote over 70 books, translated in over 60 languages. He started farming communities, life membership program. He started primary schools. Then he established a Bhaktivedanta Institute. He established a Bhaktivedanta Charitable Trust to locate and renovate pastime places of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna. And Prabhupada also introduced dioramas to explain Vedic philosophy. He guided his artist disciples to do paintings. He calls them windows of the spiritual world. And Prabhupada traveled the globe 14 times, Hare Krishna, in 12 years, visiting 24 countries. Can you imagine what we are speaking about? Person at this age. So if we study this book that Prabhupada wrote, the 12 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a classical book on devotion, history, science, philosophy, even if we just listen to a class on it every day, it'll take us 50 days to go through the whole Bhagavatam, verse by verse. But, one thought leader who was reflecting on these achievements that we are reading about here, he said that this Bhaktivedanta Swami is genuinely a holy person with enormous integrity. Of course, one cannot be God's representative if one is, if one cannot be trusted, isn't it? So we see Srila Prabhupada, how much he was trusted and loved because he's Krishna's pure devotee. Somehow or the other, you and I, we are connected to Srila Prabhupada's great mission. And we have a duty to share what Srila Prabhupada has given with us. I'm going to now read another extract and we'll try and conclude shortly after that. How much time do we have, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu, we have like around 45 minutes. We can go.
Okay, very good.
Let's say
Very
40 minutes.
Okay, I'll stop in about 20 minutes and then answer some questions if there are, and then we'll end there, okay? So we're reading now from page 267. Chaitanya Charitamrita states that unless one is possessed of Krishna Shakti, a special power from God, one cannot propagate the chanting of the holy name. Kalikare Dharma, Krishna Nama Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tare Pravatana. The fundamental religious system in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Unless empowered by Krishna, one cannot propagate the Sankirtan movement. Just one more thing I wanted to say, just to see, in terms of Prabhupada's achievements, we were reading, we were just reflecting some of those numbers. A month ago, the GBC resolved to form what they call a global healthcare committee. On this committee, we have over like 50 or 60 specialist doctors from every country in the world. And for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure and for the service of his devotees, there's going to be like a virtual hospital created globally. So if you are in Mauritius and you have a particular health challenge, you are able to get onto this virtual hospital consulting room, and a specialist surgeon, a devotee, somebody who's initiated from somewhere in the world, you're able to speak to and get comfort, get a second opinion. This is very important Vaishnava Seva. And you can see as ISKCON is growing, more and more are becoming, the movement is expanding in more and more ways where the membership, the core for our Vaishnava community, we can get the benefit of being a member of ISKCON. So according to Vedic literature, when a person has extraordinary spiritual endowment, Krishna Shakti, he is known as a Shakshavesh avatar. Although the word avatar generally refers to incarnations of God himself, the term Shakshavesh avatar refers to an individual empowered by God to enact the mission of God in this world. Shakshavesh avatars and their particular functions are mentioned in the Vedic literature. For example, Emperor Prithu possessed a Shakti for God-conscious administration. The 4 Kumaras possessed a Shakti of transcendental knowledge. And Narada Muni possessed a Shakti of devotional service. Lord Buddha whose name and activities described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is also a Sakshava's avatar. And even other divinely empowered personalities outside the Vedic culture, like Lord Jesus Christ and Muhammad, are accepted by Vaishnava acharyas as Sakshava's avatars. Srila Prabhupada's activities during the year 1968 through 1971 established him as a Sakshava's avatar, and he fulfills the predictions of the scripture. Prithiviti achayate nagaradi gram savatra prachara mora. Now, in all the villages and towns of the world, everywhere, the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya will be preached. Even from the viewpoint of religious history, Prabhupada's preaching was a fulfillment of a mission of Lord Chaitanya, who had appeared in West Bengal about 500 years before Krishna consciousness came to the West. The Vedic literature and the Vaishnava acharyas concur that Lord Chaitanya is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, appearing this age as a pure devotee of the Lord. And just as Lord Krishna appeared with his plenary expansion, Lord Balaram, Lord Chaitanya appeared with Lord Balaram's incarnation for Kali Yuga, Lord Nityananda. Even Lord Nityananda himself, during his pastime appearance in India, did not approach as many fallen souls as Srila Prabhupada, nor did he approach souls in such degraded conditions of life in so many rejected parts of the world. Hare Krishna. But he has done so now through his representative, Srila Prabhupada. As a recipient of combined mercy of Gaura Nitai, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, Srila Prabhupada, he blessed the world with love of God. Srila Prabhupada, however, never described himself as a great empowered personality, either in public or among his disciples, but he stressed that he was in disciplic succession, carrying the authorized knowledge, and he encouraged his disciples to take the same position. We want to create many pure devotees so that other people will benefit by their association. In this way, the number of pure devotees increases. Prabhupada knew well that propagating Krishna consciousness was not a professional business, although in India, many professionals spoke or wrote on Srimad Bhagavatam to earn their livelihood, and they could not convert materialistic people to devotional service. Only a pure devotee could change the materialistic heart. Prabhupada did not even conclude that he was a pure devotee, only that he was a servant of a pure devotee, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his Guru Maharaj. Now, another important point to consider is that Srila Prabhupada had this burning desire to give Krishna consciousness, and you'll see it all came from an instruction from his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You'd know that, sorry, there are people coming in here. You would know that at the time that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was preaching Lord Chaitanya's message, the message that Kaviraj Goswami had given had about by this time pretty much been lost. You know, you had the Islam, the Mughal invasion. You had done great damage to Vedic culture. Also, the real damage that was done was by the British, who, when the Europeans came, they thought that these local people were like savages. You know, at that time, there were just 200 million. I think the population was 200 million. And yet there's 125,000 British soldiers who were controlling most of India. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was there at this time in the middle of all of this, but the British, they introduced electricity and the railway system and telegrams and printing press. So the local Indian people were very impressed. As a matter of fact, this term GBC, Governing Body Commission, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta got this from the British rail system. The British rail system was managed by a governing body commission. And Bhaktisiddhanta, you know, he borrowed the idea from there. So also what was happening at the time was the local people, their faith was being admonished. So some European scholars started to, like Miller, they started to study the Vedic literature. And they tried to use the scripture to justify something like cow killing, believe it or not. So what happened at that time was that there were a lot of free-thinking Hindus who started to reform, calibrate, re-engineer their Hindu beliefs and bring it more in line with kind of European culture to avoid any onslaught. Hence you have, you know, all of these different like faiths of of Hinduism actually came at that time. Now, here's something very interesting that happened at that time. Seeing Srila Prabhupada here, it's mentioned here about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. At that time, the Vaishnavas were very, very disrespected. There were many upper sampradayas. So, you had the scientific advancement happening in India, and on the other side, you had the collapse of the Vaishnava religion. You had new reform religions that was there. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was in the dead center of all of this. So when he was invited, because he was a foremost scholar at that time, so he was invited to join forces, and there was an emphasis that social and philosophical things were emphasized instead of pure devotion. You know what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did? He defied all of these scholars. He stood alone on one side, and he employed his scholarship purely to defend pure devotion. So these Western scholars and other scholars who were there, they were shocked because they considered that devotional service, bhakti yoga, was outdated. It wasn't a modern thing. But Bhaktisiddhanta, he established pure bhakti as the impulse of the soul, and he challenged this kind of counterfeit bhakti that was being presented at the time. So he did very transformative things. He established pure devotion. What did he do? He introduced a sacred thread. He took sannyas from the picture of his Guru Maharaj. He gave Babaji initiation to 12 disciples. And he challenged so many of these other deviations. So you see the instruction that he gave to Srila Prabhupada: if you get money, print books. Srila Prabhupada is a great general in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's army. He was advanced. He advanced this evangelical spirit that Bhaktisiddhanta gave him. So even if you read these first few pages, you'll see how much Srila Prabhupada was committed to following Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instruction. And it's critically important for the success of a devotee that to serve the orders of the spiritual master, because without serving the orders of the spiritual master, Krishna is not pleased. So I'm going to read this last paragraph and then we'll have some discussion, okay? Of course, in one sense, it is already completed and perfect. Prabhupada's preaching had always been successful, even when he had struggled alone in India to make his message heard through Back to Godhead magazine, the League of Devotees, and his translations of Srimad Bhagavatam. He had always remained fixed in the transcendental order of his spiritual master and Krishna. Therefore, he had been successful. The Krishna conscious movement was already complete. And now, by the will of its author, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this completeness was becoming manifest. But the work, the ecstasy, the samadhi, or selflessly and single-pointedly serving that mission was unending and ever unfolding. Now, there was a foothold in Africa. Tomorrow, he would fly to Bombay, where Krishna had already allowed him a foothold. And as Krishna desired, he would continue to travel and send his devotees and his books and his messages until he reached every town, every village in the world. So you see, dear devotees, in giving Krishna consciousness to every town and village, Prabhupada created the system. You and I, we've inherited from Srila Prabhupada the kingdom of God, but we've also inherited that sacred duty that we have to take to every town and village. As devotees living in these towns and villages, we evaluate that what Srila Prabhupada actually gave us. In the kingdom of God, Goloka Vrindavan, that 10% of the souls that are in the material world, and Krishna makes so many arrangements for us to go back to him. It's interesting that so much effort is applied. Now the Sankirtan movement, it's like, made so much more easier with Srila Prabhupada's mercy. In this next chapter of this lilamrta, you would read that I'll build you a temple. Now I understand there in Mauritius, we've started a glorious temple project, building a beautiful temple called the Temple of Unity. This is an extension of the sharing that is being read on these pages, that sharing spirit that is described here by Prabhupada. What an opportunity. You have a fantastic leadership team there in Mauritius. You can be absolutely assured on what we've just read, that Srila Prabhupada's blessings, the blessings of our whole sampradaya, are with you as you attempt to build this temple for Krishna. It's a home for Krishna. He will live there forever and you and I will be long gone. But in exchange, Krishna will give us a home, an eternal home. And building this temple is the top priority for all Vaishnavas in Mauritius. It's an expression of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, and whatever way we could do to help. Every devotee living in Mauritius can do something, anything, put a shoulder to the wheel. It's a unique once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, the sprint has began. Now we carry on sprinting until the day we hear the conch for the first arati for the Lord, then we can rest. Until that time, we should tax our brains, and if we don't have some service connected to the temple, we go to the management, beg them, please give me some service. Can I raise funds for one light, one globe, one tile, one window? If we have a difference of opinion, some or the other with some devotee, let's melt that difference in the service to Srila Prabhupada in this project by joining our hands to build this project. So again, I offer my respects to all the devotees there in Mauritius, and we're looking forward when we can visit and physically be in your company, and in particular to see the glorious temple that's being built there for the glory of Srila Prabhupada. So at this point, I think we can stop and have some exchange of ideas, or you have questions, or I'm totally at your service.
Thank you so much, Govardhan Prabhu. I'm really very happy to be again in touch with you. So I'm on behalf of the whole Motion Yatra, I wish to thank you for unfolding this chapter so nicely to us and sharing your zeal and enthusiasm about book distribution. While you were speaking, I just quote one small phrase when you mentioned Prabhupada need the Africans, and Mauritius is part of Africa, and in that way I would say Prabhupada needs us all. We are all part of Africa. Thus, it is our duty to help and push for this wonderful movement in society. With these few words, I would now request devotees who wishes to intervene to ask any question or comment or appreciation to please click on their virtual hand. Thus, here we will allow them to intervene. Any devotees who wishes to intervene can please click on their virtual hand. Thank you. Okay, we have Vidura Prabhu whose hand is up. Yes, Vidura Prabhu, please go on.
Hare Krishna, Govardhan Prabhu.
Oh, Vidura Prabhu, my obeisances.
Obeisances. So thank you for unfolding the chapter on every town and village. And I know that you are doing a great effort to distribute books around Africa in different languages. And based on this chapter, we see in every town and village in the world. How do you assess from the time that Prabhupada came to Africa up to now? How do you see the progress in Africa is gone?
I think, the progress has been relatively good. If we take South Africa, we have 18 projects here, over 4,000 initiated devotees. We have many thousand in the congregation. In Mauritius, you have a very vibrant Vaishnav community. North Africa is predominantly Islam, but East Africa, in Ghana, we have 350 initiated devotees. We have a temple where 8 aratis are going on every day. We have a farm community, and we have very qualified devotees. I was there in West Africa some years ago, and one initiated devotee is the dean at the university. The other person owns a whole TV network. So it's a very vibrant Vaishnav community. The children are born in the community. Just before I came onto this call, I just received a report from Mahaprasad Govinda Prabhu, who's from Ethiopia. His family he comes from a Jehovah's Witness background, but he's a Vaishnav. He's a devotee initiated in his, and he works in Oman, lives in London, but he went to Ghana recently, West Africa, to revive book distribution. He's a member of the African BBT. So he sent me some pictures, of Harinam parties going out, book distribution going out. It was just an unbelievable sight. If my technology skills were good, I would share it with you on the screen. It is just so heartwarming. So yes, most certainly, a lot of vibrant. If you go to Kenya, you have a beautiful temple. As a matter of fact, I think the Kenya temple, if any of you have been there, it's probably maybe bigger than Radharadhanath in Durban. Our devotee Omapati Prabhu is just such a diligent servant of Prabhupada, very vibrant. But the thing is, there's lots more to do. And we have to, like here in South Africa, we have to give Krishna consciousness to the local people.
True.
Prabhupada wanted that. He gave 3 instructions when he came. He said, build a temple in Chatsworth, which we did. Install Jagannath deities. We did that in Phoenix. We also have a place called Phoenix here.
Yes, true.
And then he said the third, yeah?
I visited, yes.
In there, right. And the third instruction, he said, preach to the local people. So that's an area we've not done very well in, admittedly. We're working on it very hard. A month ago, we acquired a property in a place called Auckland.
Yes.
Our devotee, Savyasachi Prabhu, is heading that up. You may know Savyasachi Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj.
Yes.
And he's a sannyas candidate. So he's moved into that project and he's leading that project. So there's Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, ever increasing. Yes.
If we have to see the education, you see, you're talking about the distribution of the books. Do we have the African continent? I think there's a great field for education in terms of school, in terms of structured school to be able to propagate Prabhupada's book systematically. What are your opinion about?
Yeah. These books are like bombs, right?
True.
Even if you don't understand them, if you touch them, 1 page, Prabhupada says, 1 word, it's enough to activate something in your heart.
True.
I often say that story, it's a bit of a long story. I don't know if I could say it now, but it's extremely inspiring, the potency in Prabhupada's books. There's something about these books. They may be written on paper that you and I see in any bookshop. They may have ink on it, like any other book, but it's transformative power. I've seen it in action in so many ways. I was saying you about this one young child, about 18, 19 years old. I was somewhere in Africa who came to me and she bowed down to some program. And I thought there was something like wrong with her, what is she bowing down for? And I was looking around to see if there's any Maharaj around. There wasn't. And then she picked her head up and she had tears in her eyes. So I asked her if she was okay. And she said, well, I was a child that survived the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah.
Some or the other, I am a political refugee in this country. And my aunts and uncles, we've all gathered together. And we sent the most educated, seeing you're talking about education, the most educated amongst us to the Europe of Africa, which is South Africa, in a city called Cape Town. And he would start a life, and then we would all, the Rwandan genocide was a very unfortunate. People were massacred, and it was just terrible.
Rwanda.
So this lady says her uncle eventually contacted her and said, I found what we were looking for. I'm able now to reconcile with my maker. I found peace in my heart.
True.
I can better live to the trauma that I've experienced through higher transcendental knowledge. I've sent you what I've got. So he registered mail a book. She's telling me the story. It arrived at the local post office. I picked that book up, Science of Self-Realization.
Yeah.
I read it. I agree with my uncle. I heard somebody told me the Bhaktivedanta Book trustee is here. So I came to say thank you.
Oh.
Thank you so much for printing these books. So you see, we never know whose name is on which book.
Yeah.
All we have to do is make sure, if we're at the shopping center or at a family, we ensure we have books in our car, books in our bag, and just give it out. And the after reaction, the catalyst for all of this is Krishna's mercy, right? So we just give the book out.
Give it out.
And amazing things happens after that. Sometimes, I was in Botswana some time ago, and in the lift, we were coming down, and this one very distinguished gentleman asked me, "Why are you dressed like that?" So I tried to explain to him, and then we sit down in the foyer and have a chat. And he happened to be an economist. So we were speaking some economic things with him, and he was like wondering, this person with the dhoti, he was quite informed about economic stuff. But I said to him, I have something more valuable than economics for you. We had just translated the book Setswana, On the Way to Krishna. So I said, let me get it for you. So I went to the car and brought the book, gave it to him, and he looked at the book, and then he asked me, don't you have one in English? So you see, you don't know. You don't know how Krishna would act for where, Sometimes in the urban centers, English works. But Prabhupada wanted the books. There's 2,100 languages in Africa. And we want to try and get these books. Now, the Amharic book, which is Ethiopia, you're asking about Africa. In Ethiopia, we have no center. It's just, But one devotee who's got a golden heart. He's been translating the books, helping to get them printed. And we shipped them to a house in Ethiopia. There's no devotees there, no one there. So this house is full of books. So this devotee is going to go down and empty the house out. What do you think is going to happen in Ethiopia? You're going to get some Ethiopian bhaktas and bhaktis, the glory of Prabhupada.
Very well.
The seed planted there.
Yes.
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 Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vidura Prabhu, for this wonderful question, and thank you, Govardhan Prabhu, for giving us so much detail about African Yatra, and we are so inspired. Now I will request His Grace Hare Krishna Das Prabhu to please ask his question. Hare Krishna Das Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
That's my
Krishna.
humble obeisances. Thank you very much for very nicely elaborating Srila Prabhupada lilamrta. My question is, the number of Prabhupada books has been written. It's a little bit controversy. I was recently watching the Temple of Unity web page, and it's written 147 books. So could you clarify about the number of books Prabhupada have written exactly? And which you just read, it was about 60 books. So could you clarify the number of Prabhupada books have been written?
Well, Prabhupada wrote the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and his disciples made smaller books from there. When Prabhupada left, there were 60 titles in print. And these books are translated into different languages. For example, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita itself is in 60 different languages, including Arabic, Parsi, etc. And, there is a chart that we keep. But all over the world, there's so many BBTs producing so many books. We have to update that chart. I could send that chart to Haridev Prabhu and he could share it with the devotees. But that's the chart that gives you the accurate measure of what books are being translated and printed in the world. Of course, at any one point in time you look at it, you won't get an accurate number because it's a dynamic document. In Prabhupada's time, I think the answer is 60 books. Is it okay?
Yes.
You look like you're in an aeroplane or something. Are you? No. You're in a vehicle, right?
Yes, actually, Prabhu is a bus driver, and it's amazing, Prabhu. I would just speak on behalf of Hare Krishna Das Prabhu. It's amazing because since the start of this Prabhupada lilamrta, without fail, Prabhu is every time he's there following Prabhupada, even if when he's working, driving the bus, he's there. So we're really inspired by his dedication to Srila Prabhupada also.
Prabhupada Bhakti he's got.
Right.
Prabhupada Bhakti, you'll get Krishna Bhakti.
So, I will now invite His Grace Haridev Prabhu to please unmute and intervene. Haridev Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Govardhan Prabhu.
Oh, Haridev Prabhu.
Prabhupada.
Glories to you, glories to Prabhupada.
Thank you for this very nice expose on Srila Prabhupada lilamrta. You were mentioning that, the Bhagavad Gita has been translated into many different languages. And we know that there is currently a Creole Bhagavad Gita in the making. maybe you could share with the devotees, on the status of that project.
Yes, I did mention it somewhere in the discussion. There is a Creole Bhagavad Gita. It's in a very advanced stage of translation. And the BBT Africa is hoping to have it printed and have it edited and published this year, seeing it's quiet and there's more capacity. So by Krishna's grace, maybe at year end, you'll have this book.
Jai Hari Bol.
Wow, very well.
There is one other small book that we've done, Arjuna Prabhu did, On the Way to Krishna, right? Yeah.
Yes. Do we have any other question or comment, or anyone who wishes to intervene? Okay, so so before we end this session, we would try again last time we tried to play a small video about the construction of the Temple of Unity. I would invite you all to pray towards it runs today, and then we can enjoy it. Please have a view of the current position of our upcoming Temple of Unity.
Hare Krishna. À ce là, nous retrouvons devant site construction Temple of Unity. Moi, je peux intéresser faire une petite visite, mais Prabhu, est-ce qu'il nous aidera à faire une visite là?
Sûr, mais pas toujours, nous besoin d'un responsable. Prabhu Vijay, le project manager, déjà là.
Oui.
Nous amis.
Ah,
Come.
merci.
Oui, bien sûr. Mania, bien. Avec Krishna, tout.
Hare Krishna.
Avec Krishna, tout le monde. Bien sûr. Mais comment tu veux trouver? Tu en place de monter là. Et comment tu en fais? Tu vas commencer depuis en bas, nous expliquer un petit peu, ou bien depuis là-haut, nous descendre. Qu'est-ce que tu penses?
C'est qui vous trouve meilleur?
Je pense que nous allons depuis en bas, nous expliquer. Allez, d'accord. Là, nous allons jusqu'à là-haut. Mais c'est moi, toujours, comment je te connais, nous devons respecter le nombre de sécurité. Alors, non, avec moi, nous avons une casse, nous toujours mettons une casse. Ah, d'accord, ok. Après, là, nous commençons à bouger.
Shri Shri Radha Golokaran Bhagavan Ki Jai. So, dear devotees, that's just an overview of the whole project. And if you want to someday come and visit, you can please contact the temple authority, and we can arrange for people, the devotees, to come and have a visit of the whole project. With these few words, dear devotees, we will present to you the list of our speakers for the 13th week of Srila Prabhupada lilamrta. So next week, today we finished with the fourth volume of Srila Prabhupada lilamrta. Thus, next week we will start volume 5 of Srila Prabhupada lilamrta, and our first speaker is, again, as Prabhupada said, he needs African people. So we'll be very happy to invite His Grace Swarup Damodar Prabhu from South Africa. Prabhu will be speaking on chapter 1 of volume 5, The Land is Yours, followed by His Grace Hanuman Das Prabhu, who is in Mayapur right now, and he will be speaking on chapter 2. The title is India, No One Listens to a Poor Man. And I would, as note, I would inform devotees that Prabhu, Hanuman Prabhu, will be speaking in French on Saturday, on Thursday, I'm sorry. And then on Saturday, we will have his Rasika Sindhu Das Prabhu and his wife Ashada, and they will cover chapter, it's me, we will cover by your blessings and mercy. I will build a wonderful temple for you. So these are the free speakers for the upcoming week of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta. Please, if you enjoyed today's class, if you really feel that it's really precious, I would strongly recommend you to please invite your friends, family, and everyone to come and relish this wonderful, amazing, mind-blowing pastimes of such a great personality of Srila Prabhupada, who changed the whole world. With these few words, I would again thanks His Grace Govardhan Das Prabhu for giving us a chance to hear from him about Srila Prabhupada, and hope to have more of his association soon. And thus, I would invite everyone to please unmute yourself and please switch on your camera so that we can together chant one Mahamantra and offer our obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis who are present tonight. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Pancha kalpa tarubhascha
Kripa Sindhu Cha Bhavadibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Bye.
Radha ki His Grace Govardhan Prabhu ki devotees. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. It was such a wonderful meeting with all of you, and I pray and I wish we meet very soon for more nectar. Till then, please stay safe, take good care of yourself, and see you soon for more nectar about Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Govardhan Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much.
Right. Merci Hari Mohan Prabhu. I know you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Et voilà, nous allons soon.